Hello and welcome back. My name is Gabby. I'm the English teacher here at Options for Youth Moreno Valley. This is English 12B, Unit 8, Check for Understanding, Alternative Assessment, Review, whatever it is you want to call it. And it follows the same format as Units 1 through 7, so it should be pretty familiar already. First section is the vocab review. First things first, you have to read the sentence, try to figure out what vocabulary goes into the blanks. So the child was so blank that despite his parents' protest of how loud he was being, he kept noisily working on the bottle to get even the blink of chocolate milk left in the crevices. A, tortuous and supplication. B, intrigues and topographical. C, anarchy and paltry. Or D, refractory and dregs. 2, same thing, read a sentence, fill in the blanks with the words. The mayor mocked and rejected the blank of the desperate, starving townspeople. The sight of only the elite enjoying the bounty of stored food sparked the fires of blank and rebellion. So A, paltry and topographical, B, supplication and anarchy, D, tortuous and intrigues, and D, dregs and refractory. So that's the vocab section. After that, we go down to grammar. Grammar's, I went over a little bit at the beginning of Unit 8 with that study guide. Which transitional expression added before the second sentence in the following example would help clarify the relationship between the ideas? So I'm going to read them out loud. Tell me which one sounds best, A, B, C, or D. Okay? So, the global sheltering from home measures reduced the amount of pollution in the environment as it reduced the number of operating vehicles, factories, and so on. For instance, Italy's canal waters cleared up significantly so that fish and other aquatic creatures could be seen once again. That's A. Here's B. The global sheltering from home measures reduced the amount of pollution in the environment as it reduced the number of operating vehicles, factories, and so on. In order to, Italy's canals waters cleared up significantly so that fish and other aquatic creatures could be seen once again. Here's C. The global sheltering from home measures reduced the amount of pollution in the environment as it reduced the number of operating vehicles, factories, and so on. Italy's canal waters cleared up significantly, nevertheless, Italy's canal waters cleared up significantly so that the fish and other aquatic creatures could be seen once again. And then here's D. The global sheltering from home measures reduced the amount of pollution in the environment as it reduced the number of operating vehicles, factories, and so on. Similarly, Italy's canal waters cleared up significantly so that fish and other aquatic creatures could be seen once again. That's number 2. Here's number 4. Which of these following choices demonstrate a complete, correctly punctuated sentence? A. When the moon rises, after the werewolf had stalked its prey. B. Pushing aside her fears, Carol walked into the interview room with a determined look. C. Darryl was a man of few words. He kept his responses brief and concise. D. Dr. Jeffrey was unable to complete the medical report by the afternoon deadline. So A, B, C, or D. Section 3 is the general concept review, so let's look at this together. Which best describes the literary movement that desire to break from all conventions of syntax, structure, and philosophy, scientific, political, philosophical, and ideological shifts in thinking, uses images for artistic and emotional effect, created as a reaction to a newly fragmented and confusing world of science and technology, and shows a brief in the cycles of change. Is that A, Gothic, B, Modernism, C, Metaphysical, or D, Surrealism? 6. What writing types utilize symbolic characters, settings, objects, etc. to stand for abstract qualities and traits in order to teach a moral or a lesson? Is that A, allegory, B, elegy, C, pastoral, or D, satire? This next section we're going to read the nymph's reply to the shepherd by Sir Walter Raleigh, then answer the questions. Keep in mind the poem was written in response to another poem where a shepherd expresses his sweet proposal of love for a nymph. Nymph is kind of like a fairy. If you know me, you know I read the questions first because I want to know what it is that I'm looking for during the poem reading. Sometimes for poems you do have to read them more than once. I'm not going to read it more than once. You can replay me and play it again if you want to hear it again. So what does the winter, the shepherd's clothes, and the flower symbolize? So remember, symbols are something that stands in place for an idea, right? So what idea do these things stand in place for? What statement best describes the poem's central themes? Remember, theme is a lesson learned, right? It should be applicable to a lot of people. So let's read the options too. 7, a temporary nature of all things. So do these show temporary nature? B, material and monetary wealth. Do these 3 things show material and monetary wealth? C, dull and boring, ordinary bore of life. Do these 3 things show the bore of life, the boringness of life? D, promise of relationship and marriage. Do these things show the promise of relationship and marriage? Theme, let's look. The shepherd's desire for monetary and material gains will lead to his own destruction. B, the passionate and youthful love, like the shepherd's life, is often fleeting. C, beauty, like the nymphs, is artificial, meaningless, and manipulative. Or D, the sanctity of nature is being destroyed by industrial progress by the shepherd and others. 9, the repeated strong features of the pleasures of nature being present in this poem suggest it is what type of poem? A, allegory, B, epiphany, C, stream of consciousness, or D, pastoral. And then D, what type of meter does this poem use? There's a lot of great YouTube videos on meter, so if you need help with that, I would look there. But remember, like, iambic pentameter. What is iambic pentameter? Who writes in it? Shakespeare writes in it, right? B, trochaic hexameter. C, iambic tetrameter. And then D, trochaic octameter. So let's look through this poem and see what we can figure out. If all the world were loving and young, let me start again. If all the world and love were young, and truth in every shepherd's tongue, those pretty pleasures might me move to live with thee and be thy love. Time drives the flocks from field to fold, when rivers rage and rocks grow cold. The philomel becometh dumb, the rest complains of cares to come. The flowers do fade, and wanton fields to wayward winter reckoning yields. A honey tongue, a heart of gall, is fancy springs, but sorrows fall. Thy gowns, thy shoes, thy beds of roses, thy cap, thy kirtle, and thy poses, soon break, soon wither, soon forgotten, in folly ripe, in season rotten. Thy belt of straw and ivy buds, the coral clasps and amber studs, all these in me no means can move, but cold youth last, and love still breed, had joys no date, nor age, nor no need. Then these delights my mind might move, to live with thee and be thy love. There we go. And that's all there is for the alternative assessment for Unit 8. Other than that, we'll go on to Unit 9, and we are almost done. Yay! Okay, let me know if you have questions.